Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. Today I'm going to explore Mercury stationing direct on the 18th of January. But of course it had a pre-shadow period and it also has a post-shadow period. How are those calculated? What do they mean? Are we truly over the worst? Is a Mercury retrograde all a bad thing? These are all the things that I'm going to share with you today. Also, when is the next Mercury retrograde? And what can we expect from Mercury retrogrades in the year 2023 as a whole? Also, when Mercury goes direct, what does the event chart tell us? Are there influences feeding into this that we need to be mindful of? And also, I will guide you through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces, which you can look at in terms of your sun or your ascendant or both. If you're a returning viewer to my channel, thank you so much for joining me once more. If you're new to me, it's great to have you with me. Please comment, like, and it would be wonderful if you would subscribe. I try to answer all comments, and having that sort of interaction is very much part of what makes this a community. Also, if you would like to discover what the next 12 months will hold for you as an individual, based on 3 pieces of birth data, if you share them with me, of time, place and date, I can share your forecast for the next year, plus your special life roadmap analysis. This helps you to understand the opportunities at a deeper level that are there for you to seize. You may already be engaging with some of them. Can you get to know them a little bit more intimately? And are there some tough aspects or recurring events in your life which I can help you to understand more? My special package has 30% off. Please see the link beneath this video. You also get a free Zodiac forecast for year 2023, as well as the Vedic forecast and also a Chinese forecast too. But Mercury stations direct on the 18th of January at 1:11 and 42 seconds PM Universal Central Time. On the screen now, you can see when this occurs in all the major cities of the world. Now, Mercury went into its pre-retrograde period on the 12th of December in the sign of Capricorn. Capricorn is very much about Earth, so it's about tangible things. Mercury is how we think and relate. It can also be very much to do with the planet of commerce, particularly in this sign, which really is very good at handling resources. But when that pre-shadow period began, it was 8 degrees, and that's the degree that we've got back to in the rotation of Mercury as it appears to us from planet Earth. That's what we're at, 8 degrees as the retrograde ends. But what about the post-retrograde period? Well, that ends on February the 7th, and at that point Mercury will be at 24 degrees, which is the degree it was when the retrograde began. And that's why these pre- and post-retrograde periods, shadow periods, are so influential. So I think we can really see the end of what we've learnt, but also what we've experienced in terms of obstacles and glitches, really unravel from February the 7th. But generally, I think we are going to see a picking up from this point. But what does Mercury retrograde mean? Well, of course, when it comes to anything that's to do with systems, the digital world, transport, ticketing, flight, travel, distribution, all those things have a greater than usual chance of in some way being snagged. But Mercury retrograde also gives us the chance to rethink, recalibrate, re-engineer our approach to situations. And of course, because of the sign of Capricorn is very much how we connect to the wider world, our relationship with our businesses, with the people we work for, or who work for us, our colleagues, big institutions. All those are areas that may have proved to be a little bit frustrating since December the 12th, but particularly since the end of the year. But now things will definitely speed up. But Mercury in the sign of Capricorn is asking us to think very carefully about how we can squeeze a bit more from our assets, how we can be more effective in terms of raising our profile, so communicating who we are. It could be an opportunity to think about retraining or reskilling for some people, or actually working in a completely different environment. The 10th house can also be to do with leadership and actually our local community in a way. So if you have found yourself interacting with an organisation in your area, playing a role, or perhaps supporting younger people in your situation, or someone's been supporting you, there's probably been lots of toing and froing around text messages and emails, and of course some of these may have gone awry, or maybe it's been difficult to pin things down for everyone concerned. But things will pick up. But I want to share with you now on the screen the solar event chart wheel, because this is really significant. And you can see that Mercury is in house 10, very much to do with that interaction with the world at large. But I want to draw your attention to the role of Mars. Mars itself came out of its retrograde on the 12th of January in solar house 3, but they're actually in an obtuse angle, what's known as a quincunx or inconjunct. Now that can be quite an abrasive angle. Mars in the sign of Gemini is very much about quick fire communication. Mercury, now it's going direct in the worldly but much more established energy of Capricorn, is wanting to now communicate effectively but in a very solid, thorough, systematic way. Very Capricornian energies. The ruler is Saturn, remember, so that's very much about slowing things down and being very thoughtful. But Mars brings a more impetuous spirit to bear, so we can still feel, I believe, a sense of irritation if things are not moving at quite the speed we want, because Mars in the sign of Gemini in the 3rd house is really quite a triggering influence, particularly because many of us will have been frustrated by Mars's square with Neptune through October, November and the early part of December. A lot of frustration there. Then of course Mars is retrograde through from the 30th of October to the 12th of January. So there's been a lot of slowing down, frustration building up. People have felt quite exhausted and drained. And if you feel that someone in a position of authority, such as an employer, is not listening to what you're saying, the sense of urgency is going to increase with this quincunx. You can also see that the moon is in the sign of Sagittarius, which is very free-spirited and loves to investigate, but also can be outspoken, but that's in an opposition with Mars. That polarity can see people really wanting to get their point of view across in quite an earnest and urgent way. But it also can see the energy of Mars be quite destabilizing for the energy of the moon. So it may be difficult to feel very settled at this time, despite Mercury going forwards. We can also see that the Sun and Pluto at this present time is just in front of the Sun. The Sun's going to pass over it, but they're in a conjunction, reminding us that those who have power or who are used to holding the reins are not going to give them up easily, despite the potential of the Aquarius new moon of the 21st of January being in a conjunction with Pluto, and Pluto moving into Aquarius for 11 weeks from the 23rd of March. But those old ways of doing things, if it suits those people, they're going to want to continue to hold that authority. And that brings us to the impatience that Mars, in that opposition with the moon and with that quincunx with Mercury, can still create. Also, if we look at the midpoint of this event, it is actually in the sign of Capricorn at 4 degrees, and it's in a square with Jupiter. So Jupiter in that position, if we think about the midpoint as being house 1, it means Jupiter's in house 4. So we're all wanting, we have a sense of protectiveness that's very important for us at the moment. We're wanting to engender a sense that we can cope with, all the changes that are going on in our environment. And Jupiter makes us hopeful about that, but it also suggests that we can't be too quick to approach things. So although Mercury is about thinking, it is about speaking, it is about ideas, it can be about obviously precision in its rulership of the sign of Virgo, but there, because it's an earth sign, it wants to see tangible benefits, just like its location in the sign of Capricorn. But that energy of Mars, you can see, really important. Now, in a much more positive way, Mars and Jupiter are in a great sextile. So there's going to be some pushing back, some to-ing and fro-ing. A sense of polarity is going to continue, even though that has been a theme for some while. I don't think that's going to stop on this particular event. Now, I'm going to share the event chart wheel, which I've produced in Placidus. And this sees the midpoint in house 7. You can see on the screen now. So that's obviously very much how we relate, but it's in Capricorn. And that's squaring up with Jupiter in house 11, the collective. So how we all are interacting with one another is going to be an interesting thing. There will be some people wanting to maintain the old order and other people wanting to rip it up. Now, in terms of the Moon-Mars opposition, it goes across the 6th and 12th houses. So the Moon in the 6th house is asking us to get organised, make sure our routines are solid, we're looking after our physical well-being. Mars in the 12th house can see angers that have not been sated, not been resolved, injustices continue to boil to the surface. Mercury in house 8 in the event chart, in terms of natal astrology, that's very much about the more physical handling of money, pensions, investments, property matters, but that's clashing with Mars in the 12th house. So Mars is, you can see, very influential on this event. Also, the Sun and Pluto are conjunct in house 9. So there is going to be the rule of law that some authorities will try to use in order to make sure that their interests do prevail. You can see that Venus is also square Uranus. Uranus in this chart is in house 12, and that adds to that sense of intensity about deeper emotions which are bubbling out of sight. But Venus is quite close to the surface, and it suggests really that if we can use the detachment of Aquarius, but also the diplomacy of Venus to try to deal with these worldly challenges that we're all facing, then that's going to be a good thing to do. So you can see Mercury itself going direct is not a total panacea, because we have to wait until it does come out of its shadow period, which will be on February the 7th. The next Mercury retrograde begins on May the 10th. All the Mercury retrogrades this year, apart from the very last week of 2023, will be in Earth signs. The last one is Sagittarius. And because of that, resources, think of the coins in tarot and you'll get the idea of what earth signs mean in astrology. It's about the practical world, what we can physically see, tangible benefits, or what we're doing to work hard to defend our positions so that we feel a sense of security. The other thing to say is that Mercury is an androgynous planet. It's neither male nor female. So in the changing world that we live in terms of how people are categorized or how people like to be known, whether it's they, them, it's not necessarily just binary of his and her. So that's interesting. So Mercury in a way is very much the planet of our times. Should just tell you that Mercury is exalted in the sign of Aquarius and governs the second decan of that sign. It's in full in the sign of Leo. I think this is because Leo energy is very much about fire, but it's also about pride. Mercury is about ideas through its rulership of the sign of Gemini. Of course, it's in detriment in the opposite sign of Sagittarius. It's obviously the ruler of the sign of Virgo, so that's very much about that precision and those details and looking for ways in which we can use our thinking, perhaps to be of service to others, not servile. So that's the rulership of Virgo. So it's also detrimented in the sign of Pisces. So that gives you a flavour of Mercury. It's a very energized, quick thinking, responsive, flexible, because both the signs it rules are mutable signs, so it likes to flex quickly, and that makes it an exciting energy. So Mercury going direct in the earthy, grand, statuesque, and rather proud sign of Capricorn is good for us all when it comes to worldly interactions. But you can see there's a lot of energy bubbling around, and I think that does point towards some of the unhappiness that people have in certain parts of the world, particularly in trade relations. That's been a massive theme in Britain with a lot of industrial disputes. That's not necessarily all going to die off, but you can see signs of some improvement. So some deals will be struck. With Mars going direct, that's probably going to help anything to do with transport systems. And Mercury going direct in Capricorn can be very good for some more business-like sectors. But there still will be, I feel, the potential for uprisings and disapproval of the prevailing order, which of course comes from the power of the sign of Capricorn. Please stay with me. I'm now going to go through each of the 12 zodiac signs to tell you what you can expect now that Mercury has stationed direct in the sign of Capricorn. So Aries, if you have been waiting to hear about a job application, or you're looking to find a way to learn new skills, I think that news will hopefully come quite soon. Obviously, because your ruler is interacting with the position of Mercury on this event, you're going to speak up for yourself if that news is slow to come. But I feel having Jupiter in your sign is really very helpful to you, because this is going to see you being very progressive right through to May the 16th. And there are going to be lots of new things evolving for you this year. The spring particularly can be enormously exciting. Of course, Saturn will be moving into your 12th house, so there can be some endings, but I feel there'll be far more fresh, exciting trends coming through for you as the year goes on, not least Jupiter going into your second solar house on the 16th of May, which can be better for your finances. And I feel that Mercury going direct in this location generally can see you wanting to put into place the plans that you've been formulating that perhaps have been changed here and there since Mercury went into its shadow period in mid-December. I feel there's been a period of fluid thinking. Now you're going to become much clearer about what your goals and ambitions are and start communicating them out to others with more conviction. So Taurus, Mercury going direct in your 9th solar house can be very important for contracts, for agreements, for negotiations, if you need to discuss something of a legal matter, also anything to do with an application for a higher educational institution. If you're talking about overseas plans, properties, investments, stocks and shares, or perhaps it's to do with a holiday or the desire to break out and do something more adventurous and spontaneous that may have been just blocked off a little bit lately, then obviously Mercury going direct does support the process, no doubt about that. Anything to do with publishing too. If you're thinking of writing a book, the chances are that things will start to pick up speed now. But there is a little bit of a gotcha for your sign in particular, because Mars, the planet of desire, is in house 2, and because it was retracing its steps from the 30th of October to the 12th of January and was in that really tricky right angle with Neptune all of October, November and the first week of December, if things haven't been going quite at the speed you want, there could be an enormous impatience. Now, you have an innate love of the good things in life, an innate sensuality. But I feel Mars's discordant angle to Mercury could see you rush something. And it's not good to rush something, particularly if it's an ethical decision. So if someone suggests an idea that may be to do with growth or expansion, but it means doing something that's a bit more nefarious, I would really steer clear. Gemini, obviously for you, there's been so much energy and there continues to be so in the part of your situation to do with deep transformations. Your ruler going direct is something that you're going to appreciate. But balancing a first house Mars with an 8th house Mercury is some feat, to be honest, because Mercury in the 8th house is diving deep, it's exploring, it's understanding not what people are saying, what they really mean, the subtext. It's wonderful for deepening your understanding of any subject which requires a lot of research, contemplation. Anything of a more psychic or spiritual nature could really appeal to you. But Mars in the first house can also see you dismiss those things very quickly. So be sure that your reactions are not triggered quickly when there's something of a joint nature that needs to be discussed, because part of you may resist or decline an opportunity for a deep collaboration because you want to maintain your independence. Totally understandable as an air sign, but just be aware that Mars and Mercury quincunx could be a bit challenging. Which brings us to Cancer. Now, if there have been cross wires around any kind of interaction with others, whether it is, in worldly interactions, people have misunderstood where you're coming from, or perhaps they didn't get your message, or perhaps there was some tension over the festive period with someone that you're close to, things can start to be resolved, but it doesn't change the fact that Mars is going to continue in the very tender 12th house of your situation through to the 25th of March. So if you're having an interaction with someone and you're still not quite getting the responses you expect, try not to react too quickly. Usually you will be very private about what does upset you. It's not necessarily like you to articulate in a very open way your deeper feelings, but Uranus has been pushing you to be much more frank about your philosophies and your higher calling. But I feel at the present time with this particular angle, particularly until Mercury comes out of the shadow period on February the 7th, relational matters continue to need some care. Leo, now for you, Mercury going direct in the 6th house suggests that there have been niggles around appointments, just little things that have gone wrong. Maybe it's a trusted domestic appliance that went on the blink, or you couldn't find a set of keys. That happens to me virtually every week. I must have permanent Mercury retrograde. But those kind of little details that can prove rather irritating and frustrating if they don't just flow, that has probably been part of what you've experienced since the middle of December. I think things will therefore get easier. So if you're waiting for news on a job, for example, it can soon come. What's the implication of Mars? Well, Mars is in the part of your situation that's very much to do with friendships. The 6th house is where we need to be more aware of the detail of things, but where we also may need to make some sacrifices. Mars in the 11th house is uber friendly, it wants to mix and mingle with people that excite us. The 6th house is a bit everyday, could feel a bit dull. So there may be a little bit of that still playing out in your situation, which will start to resolve itself. Obviously Venus is in a beautiful location for you now, but once the Sun moves on the 20th of January and Uranus goes direct on the 24th, I feel that then you'll really start to feel that things are speeding up nicely for you. Now, Virgo, for you, of course, Mercury is your ruling planet. So in the 5th house, very much about love relationships, our interactions with our children, if we have them, anything to do with your creativity, your passion and flair, or your social world. All of those may have had some snags since the end of the year. So if there were last minute changes of plans, dates that were on, then were off, if you've changed your mind about what you want to focus on in the new year in terms of your talents, it wouldn't be a surprise. So you can start to get clearer about things now, but with Mars in your 10th house, that's very much about raising your profile and really having your voice heard. Mars in the 10th house is mighty proud, but it has a big need to be heard, and in some ways, and please don't take this the wrong way, to dominate. And obviously Mercury in the 5th house is about where you don't think about the power and control side of things, you think about the expression side of things. So if you are feeling frustrated that you're not getting the recognition for your talents at the moment, stay cool. It is going to come to you if you keep doing what you're very good at, going through the processes in that precise, efficient, but also, very a way that's very helpful to others. The rewards will come. Libra, for you, Mercury going direct in the 4th house. Well, the 4th house has been such a hot zone, hasn't it, for so many years, the last 15 years, particularly when Jupiter and Saturn pitched up in Capricorn as well. So Mercury going retrograde here suggests that there may have been a sense that certain dynamics that you've unfortunately got far too familiar with in recent years have been playing out once more. But what you've had and what you continue to have as your advantage point is Mars, which is saying, look, I'm not going to be beholden to anyone. I'm going to maintain my freedom to do as I wish. But at the same time, you are much more conscious of your need for security. But I think if there has been a lot or some misunderstandings around your close family world or your extended family, or around anything to do with getting work done in your home, then those frustrations should ease now, which is great. Scorpio, for you, Mercury is in house 3. So of all the signs, you've probably taken the rap when it comes to technology. So if your computer keeps upgrading, or something, hard drive has failed, or a letter or a text message or an email, someone absolutely maintains that they sent it to you but you didn't get it, all of that stuff wouldn't be a surprise. But of course the 3rd house can be about our immediate environment. So Mars is your traditional ruler, so that's very passionate in the 8th house. Mercury in the 3rd house is more quick, it's more frivolous, to be honest, through its governorship of Gemini. So you need to balance the things you're feeling very invested in against how people do communicate, which can be, somewhat frivolous these days in some ways. But your modern ruler Pluto being applied to the Sun is going to help. So that letter, email, text message, glitch, they're all going to start to resolve themselves from now. You just need to hold on to your impatience if other people are not quite, as you see it, as sincere as you. Sagittarius. Well, Mercury retrograde in the 2nd house is about the foundations of your world, but it's also about money. It's also about your sense of self-worth. If there has been something that's been outstanding to you since the middle of December last year, it really may have been very trying. But I think you're going to see it start to ease for you, but Mars is in your 7th house. So that's really, since it's gone direct, been encouraging you to really assert your boundary about the things you really believe in. And it's continuing to ask you to do that. You just got to get the right balance between the two energies. Which brings us to Capricorn. So for you, maybe you've come into the new year wanting to try some different things in terms of your personal identity or creative plans, and maybe some things really started to gain momentum or just really haven't been moving at all, which may have been enormously frustrating. And with Mars in the 4th house, it may have been people close to you who've really been feeling that sense of frustration. Or maybe it is something to do with a property matter, or working from home has seen you feel a bit trapped. Things will ease up now and you can find your voice. Just be aware that there may still be someone close to you who profoundly does not agree with what you're trying to do. As much as it's frustrating, use the power of the Sun's combination with Pluto to persuade. Aquarius, Mercury going direct in the 12th house. Oh, this is so good, because if your anxiety or a sense of isolation or feeling that other people aren't keeping you in the picture, or people just seem distant, if there's all of that that's been going on really since the middle of December, but particularly from the end of the year, it wouldn't be a surprise. Mars in your 3rd house has probably seen this have quite an effect, this frustration on your nervous system. But now you can start to gain traction. It could be that you're still having to sort of work out some of your doubts, anxieties, concerns, vulnerabilities. But remember, the Sun is going to be moving into your sign on the 20th of January. Really exciting. But also Venus is with you in your sign, and that's giving you a lot of support too. So I think you're going to feel much less detached from other people now, and that's really encouraging. Now, Pisces, for you, Mercury's been in your sector in its retrograde of friendship, sociability and networks to others. It may have felt that other people haven't been in touch much, but they may be thinking you haven't been in touch much either. Also, an issue to do with a financial matter that's to do with a group or to do with a long-standing friend, that could still be a bit of a sticking point. Are you actually learning that some of the people in your circle don't have your values at all? And you may like certain elements of those people, but there may be certain parts of their nature that you find quite challenging. I feel that the energetic exchange between people is a very important thing. And if there is somebody who is sort of really raining on your parade in terms of what you really find inspiring, but at the same time is quite needy of you, perhaps in a financial context, or just always looking for your support, then those are the kind of friendships or connections that you may feel are going to continue to need reviewing. So I feel some new beginnings are coming this year with Saturn arriving in your sign, and I feel there's a lot of tying up loose ends at the moment, and some of the people you might have thought were crucial to your overall well-being may be people that are not necessarily the people you need to spend the most time with. So you can still have them as part of your collective, but I feel that the collective needs to be refined now to reflect your values much more closely. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Thank you so much. Please comment, like, subscribe if you would, and I look forward to sharing my next video with you soon.